I want to tie back to some of the work you did before that. Just bringing to the forefront the lack of affordable housing here in Chicago. So I know I believe it was 2016, 2017, somewhere around that time, you did a study on segregation. And it also discussed Chicago's roadmap for racial equality. And I think our listeners who play in a lot of these different pockets in Chicago would love to hear about this. So can you give us the background on that study? Just the 2-minute, what you guys discovered, why it's important, and how does that tie into some of the work that you are doing today?
I'd be happy to. And I'll just back up one moment from your question, which is, prior to that, I mentioned I was doing affordable housing development in North Lawndale on the west side. And I did that work for many years in many different ways. So some of that was rehabbing 2 and 3 flat graystones. Some of it was low-income housing tax credit, new construction development, and some of, so a range of different ways of using affordable housing tools in that community that, the range of your listeners might be familiar with. That really informed my perspective when I went from there to the Metropolitan Planning Council, and I was working on policy issues and a lot of affordable housing policy issues. And the last time that the city decided to take a look at the Affordable Requirements Ordinance, or the ARO, was in 2015, prior to the one we just did in 2021. And as part of that, I remember really clearly one of those luncheons that you go to where they were discussing the changes they were contemplating, and everything that we were suggesting we take a look at, hey, this is our one tool. The ARO is our one tool to help us get at how segregated we are as a city. What would it take for the city to change its requirements in this way? And the answer was often, that would be too expensive. Okay, well, what would it take if developers changed their process in this way? Well, that would be too expensive. And what it really triggered for me was a question, which was, I think our status quo of living so profoundly separately by income and by race is quite expensive. But I don't have a way to prove that or talk about that. And I wonder if there is a way to talk about that. Is there an economic argument to be made on this topic? And that really sparked that question. I found a research partner, and ultimately we found that the answer is yes, there are pretty massive and profound costs to how separately we live by race and income. What we found was, if we as a region were to lower to the median amount of segregation, just if you look at the 100 top metros in the country, if we were to lower to the median instead of being in the top 10, I'm not even saying drop us to the bottom, we're the best ever, simply just middle of the road, right? We would see an increase in $4.4 billion in African-American income, which translates to an $8 billion gain in the region's GDP. We would see 30% less homicides, and we'd see 83,000 more bachelor's degrees in the Chicago region. So what we were trying to do with these findings was to say that the way we're set up as a city has an economic impact on all of us, and therefore we are all need to be part of the solution.
There's a lot there. Mark, go ahead. I know you're chomping to get in here.
Well, I just want to be clear for the listeners. When we're talking about segregation, we're just talking about what we all know to be, we have Puerto Ricans that live in this neighborhood, white people that live in this neighborhood, African, that's what we're specifically talking about here in the study, correct?
Yeah, we're talking about racial and economic segregation, right? Which can be very different things. In Chicago, the two are very tied together, right? Okay. So our lowest income areas tend to be Black and brown. Our highest income areas tend to be white. And so it's easy to conflate the two topics, but really we did pull them apart and look at them separately by race, racial segregation, and by income segregation.